There are a few similarities when it comes to how Imu and Kaguya played their roles in One Piece and Naruto respectively. They were introduced quite late into the story, and they have been written to become a final boss type of villain to where the entire world cannot be safe if they are not taken down by the main protagonist. They both have huge ties to the lore and the entire history of both series, and even though they were both huge figures in the past, they still played major roles as antagonists in the present time. So although Imu and Kaguya are quite similar as final antagonist goes, there is still a huge divide when it comes to how both of these characters are being received by the audience. One of the main issues people had with Naruto's War Arc is the fact that they did not like how Kaguya replaced Madara as the final villain of the 4th Great Ninja War. But when it comes to Imu seems to have the opposite effect. Because Imu was added to the story, people are now even more interested in the void century and Imu's ties to Joyboy. And when Imu was only seen as a silhouette, fans were eager to see what he actually looked like and what types of powers and abilities he possesses. So it's the complete opposite compared to how the fans reacted to Kaguya's introduction. And I'm going to go through a couple of reasons on why I think Imu works as a final villain and why Kaguya failed to do so. So the first thing that Imu had over Kaguya was how well he was built up compared to how Kaguya was being built up. Let's look at how Kaguya was built up. The first we hear about Kaguya was during a conversation between Hashirama and Madara, where Madara explains the origin of chakra and the story of how Kaguya ate the chakra fruit from the divine tree and gained immense power. This was the first time we hear about Kaguya, and this was in the final arc of the Naruto series. It was less than 100 chapters before the Naruto manga ended, which made her debut quite lackluster when she got revived. When we look at how other villains in Naruto have been built up, they were done a lot better than Kaguya was. The first time we see Pain was during part 1 Naruto at the very end of the Sasuke retrieval arc, where we see the Akatsuki gathered together and we didn't see his full face at the time, we only saw his Rinnegan. Then, during the Akatsuki suppression arc, we only saw his face partially when he was talking to Hidan and Kaguzu. And it's not until the Itachi pursuit mission where we finally see Pain's full appearance as the leader of the Akatsuki. Madara has been built up since the end of part 1, where we see his statue at the final valley. And throughout part 2 of Naruto, the man in the mask went by the name of Madara for a long time, until the 4th Great Ninja War where we finally see the real Madara being reanimated as part of his plan. And that's part of why his fight against the Shinobi Alliance is so iconic and beloved by fans, because this character has been built up for hundreds of chapters, and we finally get the payoff during the final arc of the story. But with Kaguya, she was mentioned and was introduced during the later stages of the war, so it felt like Kaguya was just shoehorned into the story, and that Kishimoto only thought to bring her into the story at the last minute. But Imu's introduction didn't have that same issue. Imu was first shown during the Reverie around 900 chapters into the story, so it is still quite late into the post-timeskip of the story. But after we see Imu for the first time, he wasn't immediately dealt with, because after the Reverie arc, the story was heading into the Wano arc, and that arc was focused on taking down Kaido and Big Mom. So Imu was first shown briefly at the Reverie, but he wasn't the main focus at the time, because taking down Kaido was the main priority of the Four Emperor saga. And then after Wano, we see that Imu initiated the attack on the Lucia Kingdom, and then later on in the Egghead arc, we see more of Imu during the conversation he had with Cobra, and we even see his transformation when he attacked Sabo, although it was only a silhouette at the time, and this only added more mystery to Imu. And currently in Elbaf, Imu is the main antagonist of this arc, but I don't see this being the final battle against Imu, since there is still going to be a final war against the world government. And the mural that was shown on Elbaf suggests that Imu will be taken down at a later time in the story. So after almost 300 chapters since Imu was introduced, we are still getting more clues and more background on Imu as a character. We see that Imu has been operating in the shadows the entire time, and currently, Imu still hasn't been taken down yet, nor do we know Imu's involvement during the Void Century. Whereas with Kaguya, she was first mentioned by Madara during the War Arc in chapter 646, then 33 chapters later she makes a full appearance, and then 11 chapters later Team 7 defeats her. So all of this was done in less than 100 chapters since she was first name dropped. That is simply too short of a time for Kaguya to be utilized like this if she was supposed to be the final antagonist of the 4th Great Ninja War. And another reason why Imu also works as a final villain over Kaguya is the fact that Kaguya didn't really have much of a connection to the main protagonist, unlike with Imu. Kaguya was the originator of chakra, and she was the ancestor of the Uchiha, the Senju, the Hyuga, and the Uzumakis. That's about the only connection Kaguya has with Naruto, the protagonist. But when it comes to the clash of ideals and the actual personal conflict between them, it was pretty non-existent. Kaguya's goal was just to unify all chakra and take all of the chakra for herself. It's a very surface level goal, which is unlike most villains in Naruto, because a lot of the major villains in Naruto always had personal connections with Naruto in different ways. Pain was Naruto's sibling student who killed Jiraiya, and they both had a clash of ideals over what was the best way to attain peace. Obito was similar to Naruto in that they were both untalented and they both had the same goal of becoming Hokage. But then after losing Rin, Obito pretty much became a darker Naruto if he lost his friends and went on a darker path. So Naruto was the only one who could get through to him during their fight. And this also applies to Gaara, Sasuke, Madara, and even Zabuza and Haku. So because Kaguya lacked depth and had no philosophy that could clash with Naruto's, it made Kaguya feel empty and bland, which is why she doesn't really resonate well with the audience compared to other major villains in Naruto. Naruto's fights are not just about who is stronger, they are also based on the clash of ideals and the stories being told in these fights. So for Kaguya to not have any depth or philosophy that could clash with Naruto makes Kaguya a pretty disappointing villain compared to what came before her. But this is different with Imu. Imu actually has a connection with Luffy, because Luffy has the human fruit, Model Nico, which is the exact same fruit that Joyboy had. And Imu was the main enemy of Joyboy, who defeated him during the Void Century, when the Ancient Kingdom was defeated by the 20 Kingdoms. And in terms of the themes of the story, Luffy represents freedom and the sun, which symbolizes the dawn of a new era. But Imu represents oppression, dominion, and control over the world. Imu goes against everything Luffy believes in. Luffy is always fighting for freedom wherever he goes. He has taken down many villains who planned on controlling and oppressing those they deem weaker than them. But Luffy would always come in and liberate those islands by defeating those villains, and this remains consistent throughout the entire series. And now it seems that after Luffy defeats Imu and the world government, true freedom can finally be attained. And another connection between them is that when Imu descended on Elbaf, there seemed to be drums or music playing once he made his descent, similar to how when Luffy goes into Gear 5, you hear the drums of liberation. So this shows more of a connection between Imu and the main protagonist of the story. So I think the reasons why Imu works as a final villain and not Kaguya is because of how well he was built up compared to how Kaguya was being built up. And there was actually more of a connection between Imu and Luffy in terms of the overall narrative of the story, compared to Naruto and Kaguya, who didn't really have a clash of ideals, which is what Naruto's fights are all about. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you'd like to see more of my anime content, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.